So, I'm be real with you, Chief. I did not expect to play this deck, especially since it was as expensive as it was, and I got it for as cheap as I did. So, yeah, deck profile. I'm taking a break from Despia. It's still probably the best deck of the format. Kashtira, in my opinion, is probably better just because it's got a lot more powerful combos and has a lot of ways to play around Despia. So maybe it's taking on more of a flu sort of playstyle where it's the best deck against the best deck, and that kind of makes it the best deck. But at my locals particularly, this deck has seen the most variety of play. Like, we even have a wild Kashtira Crystal Beast variant, which is kind of nutty. But yeah, this isn't that. This is more of a standard list with some stuff. Deck list, I guarantee you, is going to change though. The main deck I think is pretty good, but I think the sides have got a little bit of a couple problems. But I'm going to get into that when we get to it. All right, so I'm going to just do the engine first. 3 copies of Rise Heart, 3 Unicorn, 3 Fenrir, and a Scareclaw Kashtira. I don't play the Tearlaments one because I don't think it's that good anymore. I used to play it over, I used to actually play 2 of this and then 1 of the other one, but I ended up more using just these and wanting more extenders like Prosby or make room for other more important cards. So this is what I ended up doing. For the spells, the Kashtira shit, 3 Planet, Terraforming, 3 Theosis, 3 Birth. I think this is the most important card of the deck. It's like the Taya of the deck, where essentially it's one of the few ways you can actually grind really well. It's very good at making your turn 1 boards way more powerful. In the mirror match, it's the best card. You have to be able to juggle this without your opponent being able to interact with it. Otherwise, you risk your opponent outgrinding you entirely. So this is almost always what you get off of Theosis, especially off of Unicorn, especially since people are starting to play the Retaliating Sea. I don't know, Contact Sea. That's the one. So that way you are less hit by it if you play this. If you go Unicorn into this instead of Unicorn into Theosis, you're more likely to succeed because you don't have to get the extra deck lock. And then 1 Birth, and then yeah, one Big Bang. Sorry. What I think the most important about this deck is the fact that it has so much flex spots. I think it's 19 or so flex spots in this deck, which is wild. Like 21 card engine, like almost like I'm playing like Striker or like Salad again. 3 copies of Ash, Nibiru. This is a crossout target. Shout out to my boy Peter who convinced me to play crossout, especially since I'm seeing a lot more mirror matches than I am seeing anything else where all of the people who play Kashtira also play these cards. So we'll go. So yeah, 3 Imperm. These are basically all your hand traps. You don't want to draw the nib, but it does sometimes come up, so drawing them 1 of is not always terrible. These are the 2 best hand traps in the game right now, so I'm playing both of them at 3. They're also crossout targets because this deck, these happen to hit Kashtira, so it's really, really good. 3 Prosby, standard. 3 copies of Tactics. So I actually ended up cutting the, the Shifter out of the main deck. I'm seeing way too much of the mirror match where I go, plus Despia. So it's a lot. It's not very good against Despia. If they're a good player, they know how to play around it, especially with Windbrim out now. Shifter just doesn't do enough, so I just cut it out of the main deck entirely. And the only thing it hits right now is like Tier, which, to be honest, I've not seen a single one yet after the ban list. And it hits Sprite, which they don't really care anyway because they're more or less just cutting the toads. Or the toads they're cutting the frogs and the Boojin thing just to do other things. So, and then 3 copies of Crossout. Like I said, this card is amazing. And then 3 of my favorite card in the deck, 3 Book of Eclipse. This card has so many nice applications. Like, there was some nutty combos you got to do where you like turn off your opponent's board. Like, this acted like a Dark Ruler that you could essentially drop in the draw phase and then have your opponent just like insta lose, depending on if it's a mirror match. It's very skillful, and if you know when to use it properly, it can be just a straight-out blowout. Like against, say, Sprite, for example, if you're seeing your opponent go just into a normal summon a dude, you can make the read that they probably don't have starter. Then you can book their monster and then just have them pass turn, essentially, because they have to special their dudes from hand, but they don't have control of 2. So yeah, that kind of thing comes up a lot in this deck, and I love Book of Eclipse for it. Extra deck. 3 copies of Rise Heart, 3 Shangri-La. You could probably cut down on these if you really want to. I'm playing Prosperity, and I want to be able to banish for 6 if I can. And I like having the extra flex spots that are not necessarily having to be banished off of Prosperity. Like, you could honestly play 2 and 2 and you would still see success. I like the 3 and 3 just because I like playing Prosperity and still being able to out resource my opponent by having more of these in the extra deck. Diablos, Dracosac, Zeus, Big Eye. I'll be honest, I'm only playing 1 Zeus, and to be honest, I don't have a problem with that, because 99% of the time, your opponent's going to get rid of the Zeus before they hit anything else, and I don't usually make it all that much. I'd rather make Big Eye, especially in the mirror match. If your opponent goes Shangri-Ira and then leaves you with, on your standby phase, you can Big Eye, take it, make your Arise Heart, and then it's going to be 3 materials immediately. It's super, super good. 1 Flare Metal just for the time. Nightmare Phoenix, this could be the second Zeus if you really wanted to. I've also seen people play Untis, which is interesting because that means they can main deck triple Nib. My problem with that, though, is that it makes the Nib dead because you have to draw it after you Prospe, which, in my opinion, is way too late, and I don't think that's necessary. I would rather honestly play this and just have it as a thing that can happen eventually. Like this, like, let's be real here. These are Prospe targets. This could be honestly a second Donner, just because the Donner does actually come up in the mirror match. If your opponent imperms your Unicorn, you can link it off for this, make Donner, and then special another card. Or if you have Birth that you searched off Unicorn previously, you can revive it and then do combos from there. Like the Prospe targets are like these, this, and then like 2 of these, and then like the Phoenix or the Flare Metal. So I do Phoenix if I'm going into game 3. And I do Flare Metal I banish this in game 1 and 2, just because I'd rather have this for time. Yeah, that's the extra deck. You can honestly play a second Honor or a second Zeus. I don't need it as of now, because like every time I've made it, it's not been like super worth. Okay, side deck. This is the thing that's going to change the most. 3 copies of Shifter, because this still does come up against some matchups, especially Rogue. So this is still here. I'm playing 3 Radiant. And then this, it needs to be 3 Kamungus. The reason for 3 Kamungus and 3 Radiant is because they're both 7s, and I don't like Lava Golem. I think Lava Golem is way too specific on playing against the mirror match. And yeah, it does hit Despia, but in the same vein, these hit Despia just as hard. And if your opponent's making something like Mirror Jade, your best out to Mirror Jade is not to tribute over it. It's usually just to banish it face off Shangri-Ira, or off of a Rise Heart. So in which case, the Lava Golem is just not doing as much value anyway. I'd rather have these, be able to tutor these in during game 2 and 3, and then just have a dude that if I draw it, it's fine. If I draw 2 of them, it's fine, because I can Kaiju your opponent, and they're both level 7s, so you can make seize plays with it. You can still normal summon off of Birth and not have to worry about, it's not, Lava Golem's level 8, they're level 7, so you can do stuff with that. Rest of the side, Twins and Dusters. I don't know if I should respect Labyrinth yet. After YCS Vegas, I'm pretty sure I'm going to have to. If I do, though, I'm probably going to end up playing 3 of this, cutting the, I'm going to play 3 Kamungus after I get them from the structure decks, and then cut these down and play a 3rd of this, and I'm also going to be swapping these out for evenly match. I also want to put in Dark Hole, so what I'm thinking here is I'm going to cut 1 of these for a 3rd twin, and 2 of these for Dark Hole, and then these 3 will be evenly, or maybe I'll swap 2 evenly, 3 Dark Hole. I need to test it, because I do want to be able to deal with Ra's Disciple or Iblylock. However, the Kashtira against Despia, they're 99% of the time going to do the the Gimmick Puppet Nightmare thing nowadays, which, you know, it is what it is. In that matchup, you're probably, if you see it game 1, you'll probably be sighting in the Deef Shifter anyway. So maybe there's something you can do there. Or if the future does, or if it does come up, you might be able to play something like the Bestials again, like maybe triple Druid Swarm, just so that when they go Expulsion target, you can chain to banish it. We'll see. But yeah, this is where the deck is going to change the most. How do I feel about this format going into it? I like it. I like this deck. It's fun to play. I don't know. People are comparing it to Tier. I'm like, no, it's not. It's not even close to playing Tier. Like, the fact that this deck only plays like 1 card on your opponent's turn, that's not a like generic spell trap or hand trap, is like, it's not even close. Plus, this deck is not nearly as widespread. Maybe that's just because of the price, where Tearlament in its end, or near the end of its life, was rather cheap, but that could be just because of Banlist fears. The fact that this deck doesn't really counter anything in the format right now. Like, Despia doesn't super care about a Rise Heart. The problem with the deck in that matchup is more or less the zone locking. So if you play Despia, you're probably fine with this matchup anyway. Things are being played in that deck like Super Poly. They're like, I'm seeing people play like Triple Sornier just so that they can do Rebellion into Beast plays. Like, maybe there's something you can do there. To be honest, I think Despia is the best deck going into this format just because it doesn't auto-lose to Kashtira, and it has a fairly balanced matchup against itself depending on the deck building. Plus, I wouldn't be surprised if that branded Eruption or whatever the fuck, that trap card that lets you essentially Scythe Lock your opponent becomes a thing again, because why not? You can Scythe Lock your opponent. I don't think it's super good against Kashtira though, just because like, if you can't summon from your extra deck, sure, whatever, you'll just Fenrir Unicorn. That's not, like, this deck can surprisingly play well under things like DeFi, or not DeFi, sorry, motherfucking, what's that trap card called? The normal one that locks you out of a certain extra deck mechanic. Not Dimension Fusion, Dimensional Barrier, that's the one. It can play with, like, its back row, or with like a macro on field, and to be honest, it has a few this deck has a few consistency problems where I think Despia can outgrind and outpace it if it absolutely needed to. The problem with Despia is just that it needs to have more starters, and if you lock them, it has the same problem that Flu had, where if you hit their early starters, they are very hard for them to catch up, because most of their combos now require 1 to 2 cards, with the exception of like Aluber and Brand of Fusion. But once you get to those 1-card starters, your opponent usually has a board, so it makes it a lot harder to deal with. Plus, Brand of Fusion under a Rise Heart's not a big deal anymore, because you can go Brand of Fusion into Lubellion, dumping the Mercurier now, and people are playing 2 of that, so like, it's pretty good. And then you get the free plus off Mercurier. It's almost like if you opened Red and Brand of Fusion. But anyway, I'm hella off track. I think this is probably the second best deck in the format. I'm glad I picked it up. To be honest, like, Shangri-Ira plus a Rise Heart feels like Colossus Titan, so maybe I'm a bit biased here, but I love this deck. It's fun. I'm going to be playing it for a while. Don't expect Despia list until after something nuts happens, or like a Banlist, because I wouldn't suspect that. Unless I drop this deck, I'm going to be playing it anytime soon. Hope you guys enjoyed. I'm going to be in the comments for like forever. I'm still taking comments from like that weird dogshit goatee video I made a while back. So yeah, if questions, comments, concerns, place them there. Like, subscribe, whatever. I don't fucking care. It doesn't matter. It's just a hobby. So have a good one.